Hello and welcome to the War and Peace in the Pacific International Initiative. We are honoured to be given this opportunity and would like to welcome all participating schools around the world and all schools watching.
Our top stories tonight are about war and peace in the Pacific, 75 years after World War II.
The date is February 23rd, 1942. It's 7 weeks since the Japanese attack of Pearl Harbor.
And that's when life changed. I can see the planes. I can hear the bombing. A lot of memories, nothing that I had nightmare, but it's just all of those memories.
So that's probably the closest thing we'll be able to experience.
December 7th, 1941. It's a day Mr. Jimmy Lee will never forget.
Whenever I play this sad and beautiful song, I always remember that the dread of wars and the importance of peace.
だから絶対負けないというふうに教えられていました。
Japan first attacked Darwin on the 19th of February 1942. This was the first time since European settlement in Australia that they had been attacked by a foreign force.
They had bombed Darwin, they had bombed Pearl Harbor, but Sydney, no, that was never expected.
And a bunch of Japanese aircraft arrived in the morning and bombed and attacked the city and the ships in the harbour.
Anti-Japanese sentiment that had begun months, even years before, was now policy.
This is the site where thousands of Allied soldiers marched onto the sand, ready to retake the land that was stolen by the Nazis. This is the site of D-Day.
One of the major consequences of the attack on the Elwood oil fields was the fear, often unfounded, that was created as a result of the attack.
It was the dive bombing that caused majority of the damage on the harbour. A 12,000-ton transport, the Meigs, and 4 other merchant ships sunk and 3 were beached.
First, we'll explore the different research methods and how our students have spent weeks looking through newspaper clippings, visiting museums, and scrolling through hundreds of websites.
And then there were groups that were dedicated to photos and interviews and artifacts. And I know that the artifact groups, they all went on large field trips together and took photos and brought back their research into class. And we had people working on those resources, and we had a great deal more people who were actually going to locations and talking to people.
When there was an air raid warning, we had to shut all the lights off in our building or our home, and the whole community was in the dark.
People who experience war are getting older, and also they passed away already. So now we have to tell their stories to people around us to keep the stories alive and to preserve the peace.
So Dad was on the wharf, and he could hear all this fuss going on, all these explosions, and he thought, well, something's up, something's really up.
My grandfather was asked to bring a crane down to remove the scrap metal. When he did, they realised it was a bomb. Luckily for me, it failed to explode. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today.
The game has been moved to North Carolina due to fears after Pearl Harbor about a Japanese attack on the West Coast.
The US and Japan have entered the Battle of Midway. In this battle, fleet and light carriers have been used, as well as battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and submarines.
They were told to burn the buildings and burn any crops or anything that the Japanese could use.
So no one actually knew, besides a few senior people in the home front and military, that Newcastle was wired to blow.
Here they claim incorrectly that the attacks had no effect, hoping to calm the panicked population.
The attack on Sydney Harbour by Japanese submarines last May was a complete flop.
When World War II began in Europe, the company was tasked with designing the SBD Dauntless, which would go on to sink more ships in the Pacific than any other aircraft in the war.
And we found out that a lot of the planes that were used in the Coral Sea were the SBD Dauntless planes. And the factory that produced those planes was located like 40 minutes away from where we're sitting right now, which is really cool. And I felt this connection to history that I'd never really been able to experience firsthand before.
My favorite part of this was, I guess, really looking into museums around us.
So this project was really helpful for me because I learned about it in 10th grade, but now I really got a better understanding of it.
And throughout the process of this project, we were all split into groups, and my role was to look up pictures in regards to the Coral Sea.
And I was really excited when we found out we were going to do this project.
My favorite part of this project was going to the American Military Museum.
Having everyone work as one team.
To tell the little known history on the attacks along Australia's east coast and put this part of history into context of war in the Pacific during World War II.
And we'd like to thank the museum for letting us partake in this experience to learn about the Coral Sea and to learn about this battle.
I'd really like to thank the museum for giving us the opportunity to work with other schools, across the United States and across the globe.
We especially want to thank Mary Ames, the historian on the battleship, who let us explore the collection of artifacts from World War II.
And we end our tour where it all began. This is Mr. Forsland's classroom, home to our historical investigations and many hours of research.
Our countries fought, but we overcame that tragedy together. Now we are friends. We can make the peaceful world together.
When we look at war, we need to look at it not as a large event that a small town is part of, but as a large event that many small towns are part of.
The effects of the war still ripple through the modern day.
This episode has been one of our most cruelest and most savage, a true highlight of man's cruelty towards itself. This world is much darker and more strange than we ever could have been imagined. This is real life, and you have not been watching The Twilight Zone.